One. All right, we're live. I'm with Karl Widerquist, Georgetown professor, and we're going to talk about basic income. Karl has written extensively on the concept of basic income guarantee, also known as universal basic income or guaranteed income. He's the founder of the U.S. Basic Income Guarantee, USBIG network, which is the first basic income network in the U.S. He's the co-chair of the Basic Income Earth Network and co-founded Basic Income News. And he's written 2 books on the topic. So basically, Karl, if you have any interest in basic income, Karl's the guy to talk to. Can we start with, Karl, can you tell us the story of how you first got into this topic? Because it obviously was influential because you've been in it for a long time.
Well, actually, I guess it's in one way it gives me, I suppose, a lot of credit in the movement, or is kind of embarrassing. I was 15 years old in 1980 when I saw Milton Friedman's television show Free to Choose, when he had an episode on guaranteed income under the negative income tax variant. And I was convinced, and I began to see he was proposing it sort of as a moderate alternative to the welfare state, where you simplify things by folding everything into one less paternalistic and more streamlined policy. But I began to see it as a real challenge to the left. That if you really care about the poor, you shouldn't be telling them, do this, do that, don't do the other thing. Just relieve them from poverty. And so that brought me into basic income. I didn't start writing on it till somewhere. I had to go through high school and then college, and then had some jobs, went to grad school in economics. And it wasn't until I finished my degree in economics that I started working on it. Michael Lewis and I started co-writing a paper together in about 1996, and I've been writing on basic income ever since.
Awesome. Since you are an economist, and most people's issues, other than worrying about that everybody will become lazy if they're given a basic income every month, regardless of employment. Really, economics, I think, is kind of the most challenging thing for people. How could we afford it? And also, how about the whole work incentive thing? It's
not hard to afford. We spend $650 billion a year just on defense, more than most of the rest of the world combined. The poverty gap in the United States is much less than that. And we also have a lot of programs that are very wasteful, where most of the money goes into overhead and something like that. The economist Charles Clark estimates that you could finance a basic income large enough to eliminate poverty in the United States with a flat income tax rate of less than 39%. So it's very affordable. It will be a redistribution from the wealthiest people in the United States to people at the lower income level, but that's what we need. We've been becoming increasingly unequal in the United States, with more and more of the rewards to what we do going only to the owners of large amounts of property. And we need something to give workers some leverage so that they can command better jobs and better wages, and we can reverse the system where we keep getting more unequal and build a more equal economy and get the middle class the first raise they've had in real terms in 40 years.
Yeah. How about another concern of people is inflation. If all this money is in circulation, does that cause a problem for inflation?
It's funny, the inflation question comes up so much because it's really one of the easiest questions to answer about basic income. Basic income is not special spending. All government spending, whenever the government spends money, it creates inflationary pressure. Whenever the government taxes money or sells bonds, it brings money back into the treasury and it creates deflationary pressure. And if you have deflation, that's worse than inflation. That can really destroy an economy because that causes a bunch of businesses to go out of business. They still have to pay their debts back in the old money. And if we have deflation and they can get less for what they're selling, they all go out of business. But you're creating inflationary pressure whenever you spend, whether you buy an aircraft carrier or a hospital or spend money on basic income, that causes inflationary pressure. To relieve that, you tax the money back and you keep those things in balance. Now, keeping them in balance is not easy. Well, it's not simple anyway. It's not as simple because it's not just a simple quantity that a certain amount of money goes out, certain money has to come back in. It depends on economic conditions. When the economy is really booming, that will tend to cause inflation and have to get more of the money back. When the economy is stagnant, it will tend not to cause inflation as much, and you don't need to get it back. And getting it back too fast will cause deflationary pressure. And so the government just has to stand ready to adjust those things and adjust taxes to counteract any inflationary pressure caused by whatever spending it happens to be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm practically sold on the idea. I mean, it's hard to argue that, sure, there could be problems, but it's very hard to argue that it's not a huge improvement from our current welfare system. Huge. Yes. So now you are a Georgetown professor in Qatar.
Yes, in their campus in Qatar.
Okay, yes, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I know there are a few experiments starting up in Scandinavia and even in Oakland, right? But has there been an experiment already in Qatar? In some form?
No.
Okay.
No. Qatar is a strange place. It's a place where the government the government doesn't want any Qataris to be poor, and none of them are poor. But it's a very small population. There's only maybe 300,000 Qataris, but there are over 2 million people in the country. So they have many, many foreign workers, of which I'm one, and I'm one of the well-paid Western professionals, but they also bring in a lot of very poorly paid people from developing nations to do their labor. And it's a strange system where all the citizens are well off. They don't, not with the basic income, but with other policies, but they've imported some extremely poor people. So there's a very extreme poverty in Qatar, despite it being the world's wealthiest country in terms of per capita income, at least. Now, but the way they try to benefit the citizens without actually giving them a basic income actually is harmful. They want everyone to have a job, but yet if you make it so that everyone has a job, then you can't. It has to be a fake job, because if it's a real job, you have to do some real work, or you'll get fired. And they don't want to do that, so they give them. It's possible to get fake jobs there, and fake jobs that play extremely well and don't demand a lot of effort, but do take up your time. So people, if they had a basic income, if they had a basic income, they could be out working and looking for a job, are stuck in this fake job and have no sense of an ability to go out and find something better or more interesting.
Yeah, or do something themselves. Create their own job, find their own work.
Yeah.
So do they not give some kind of welfare system or cash? They just have like a job guarantee thing. Is that it?
Well, it's not exactly a job guarantee, but in the way that job guarantee people want it to work, it's not a counter-cyclical policy. But if you're Qatari, you'll get all these benefits, including government jobs and other things like when you get married, the government will give you like a 4-bedroom townhouse as a gift.
Whoa.
Yeah, nice.
Wow.
Nice little wedding present.
I think, yeah, it is. I may have been confusing it with was awful with Libya. Didn't they give like some kind of like at least 1 year? Didn't they give just cash to every citizen or something or no?
No, they didn't. Gaddafi talked about it. Gaddafi talked about it.
Big difference.
And he kept blaming other people for the fact that they didn't have it, even though he'd been the dictator of the country for 30 years, and if he wanted a basic income, he could have created one at any second. So he kept saying, yeah, he's going to do it, and there's resistance in the parliament, but the parliament did whatever he told them to or whatever. Now, what you might be thinking of is Kuwait.
There you go.
Kuwait, but that wasn't much of a basic income. They gave a couple of one-time grants in cash, which is, of course, moving in the direction of basic income. But there were small one-time grants, and it was only to the citizens. And Kuwait is very much like Qatar, where it has a few citizens and many foreign workers. So these grants only went to people who were already wealthy.
Let's see. Let's go back to. Well, thank you for clearing that up. Geez, that's embarrassing. Yeah. Me mixing my Middle Eastern countries up. Not good.
That's all right.
Let's see. Well, can I? I did experience an interesting situation this weekend at MLK Memorial.
Yeah, I saw some of the video on that.
Mm-hmm.
Like and so you did a good job.
Thanks. I'll just quickly summarize for people who haven't seen it. But because most people are unfamiliar with the fact that MLK wasn't just a big leader for racial justice, but also economic justice. And he did, in fact, endorse a guaranteed income, the idea of it. And there's not many quotes in his memorial on economic justice, so I thought I'd bring these in, including his quote, one of his quotes for supporting a guaranteed income. Now, the police came and even handcuffed me and to have me when I didn't remove the banners. I thought, for sure, I had been warned about this, but I thought, my God, all I'm displaying is MLK's quotes on MLK holiday at MLK Memorial. So I thought, perhaps there could be an exception, or it wouldn't really cause a problem. And it wasn't a problem for any of the visitors. But so interestingly, it actually wasn't a permit issue. The entire area inside the memorial is just restricted to any kind of demonstration. Although I don't think I didn't consider this a demonstration as much as just kind of a celebration and just like sign of respect for MLK on his holiday. But anyway, so just Phyllis, since you are a philosophy professor, as well as an economist, what are your thoughts on this interesting situation where MLK's own words were not allowed in his own memorial?
Yeah, I thought that was that's a great tag. Handcuffed for displaying MLK quotes at the MLK Memorial on MLK Day. And it really, the police didn't come off looking very good there. They looked very authoritarian and unwilling to explain themselves, and a hair trigger for cuffing you. So I think you did a good job of pointing out the difficulty of that. It is funny to have someone, you know, MLK's life was dedicated to activism, you know, and then his own memorial prohibits activism at the memorial. And of course, he went to jail, I believe, more than once for civil disobedience. So I guess that gives you an opportunity for civil disobedience. But you know, it's great to see actions like that happening, and I hope you can share that video. I also think people who are concerned about excessive police force will be interested in that. You should get people from Black Lives Matter and groups like that to take a look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But to be totally fair, like, it is a restricted area. That's the law. Mm-hmm. Although the part of that, the fact that the MLK Memorial is a restricted area, that was not public information. That's not in the code. That's not in the code. It says there, it lists restricted areas for other monuments or in memorials. Not MLK. That I had to like go to the ranger's office afterwards. They gave me like a map of that. They didn't. It's not available online or on their website. It's just kind of odd.
Yeah,
even when
that's funny.
So let's see. What other questions do I have for you? You know, I tried looking up your book, and it's like $100. I couldn't find one for less than $100 on Amazon. I think it's time for a reprint.
I have actually I have early versions of most of my publications, including my books, online on my selected work site.
Okay, good to know. Jeez, that's easy. So everybody check them out. What you want to pitch one of your books? Explain one of your books. Tell everybody what it's about. Why they should read it. Well,
my book that I wanted to call "Freedom is the Power to Say No," and my publisher wanted to get keywords into the title, so they made me give it the main title of "Independence, Propertylessness, and Basic Income: A Theory of Freedom is the Power to Say No." So it's got a very long title, but those keywords are important. Yeah. It's a book about what it means to be a free person. And to be free, it's not enough just to be out of jail and not a slave, but you have to be free from oppression. And to be free from oppression, you need to have civil rights and to be able to choose your own leaders and freedom of speech and so forth and so on. But what I'm arguing is that our idea of what it means to be a free person is lacking something. And that is, you should be free from forced labor. That no one should be able to force you to work for them. And no group of people should be able to force another group of people to work for them. And you think, well, if we don't have slavery, we don't have that. But actually, yes, we do. We have indirectly forced labor. Because people who have no property are not allowed to work for themselves. They have to work for someone who has property. So everyone without property has to get a job working for at least one of the people who owns property. And so people in this group have no other choice but to work for that group. And that's not a fact of nature. These people aren't unable to work for themselves. They are not allowed to work for themselves because all the resources, according to the law, belongs to someone else. Even though for the first 200,000 years that people were on this planet, we were able to work for ourselves as hunters, gatherers, fishers, farmers. The resources of the earth were out there for everyone to use. And then we made property out of them, and property is a good thing. We've been able to do a lot of things with property that people without it haven't been able to do. But creating property and just saying, well, some get to own it, and then the others have to work for the ones that have it in order to have anything, in order to even their basic survival, that is not a good thing. If you want to create property, everybody has to get a share. And how do we give them a share? Well, the people who have it should pay a tax that goes back to the people who don't have it, the people who have taken control of the property, who've imposed a duty on all of those of us without property, should pay a tax and give it back to them. And this, I argue, is essential to maintaining people's status as a free person. And I talk about why this is important to social justice, and I talk about why this is a better approach than some of the others in the philosophy literature. And I tackle the question of whether people have a duty to work and a duty to contribute to society as a whole. And that's basically what the book's about.
Cool. Yeah. I want to ask you about, you organize the Basic Income Congress. Is that right? It's like a yearly get together among basic income enthusiasts and activists. Well,
there are at least two that I've been involved with. The North American Basic Income Guarantee Congress has happened every year since 2002. I helped organize the first one and several of those. The next one, which I'm not helping to organize, is this summer in June in New York City. I'll be going and I'll be speaking, and hope we'll see you there. Now, but the oldest Congress in the world is the Basic Income Earth Network Congress, which has been happening every 2 years since 1986. So a good 16 years longer than the USBIG Congress. But it has been only once every 2 years until this year. This year we're going every year. So we have another Congress coming up this September in Lisbon, and I'll be there also. So I hope I'll see you and some of your listeners there.
Yeah, sounds good to me. I mean, it's amazing because I see so much progress. It's becoming so much more common that, you know, people, you bring it up to, that for it to come up in conversation, really. Mm-hmm. And that's just me having known about it only for the last few years. And you've been in it since 2000 or so? Or earlier?
I became interested in the idea in 1980 when I was 15, and you hardly ever heard about it. I heard about it in some economics classes and not much. I bring it up now and then. And it was just a thrill to me in 1998 to learn that the Basic Income Earth Network, yen, was having a Congress. And so I went to the Congress, which was great. And it was just, at that time, it was just such a thrill to be in a room full of people who supported basic income. I'd been into it for 18 years at that point. I was 33, and I'd been interested in it for 18 years, and I'd never imagined being in a room with 250 people who all supported basic income. It was thrilling. Now, since then, it's gradually grown. I've been watching the movement really since then, since 1998. I started writing the USBIG newsletter in January of 2000. And then I used to have to scour the internet to look for some news to put in the newsletter. But national networks were popping up in more and more countries. And the movement was still very small and sparse. But when you look at how it was spreading around the world, you look back and actually it was growing substantially back then. In 2006, I think, was when it began to really turn up, when Bishop Kamita of the Lutheran Church of Namibia went to a BERN Congress and slammed his fist on the table and said, words, 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 we got to take action. Now, people said that stuff all the time. I didn't do anything. But this guy actually had a plan. He had money behind his plan. He had raised funds to have a privately funded basic income pilot in a small village of about 1,000 people in Namibia. And this brought great attention to it. Soon soon after, there was another pilot in India, and there were 2 petition drives in Europe, one in Switzerland and one in the European Union. The European Union one, even though they didn't raise the 1 million signatures that you needed, they raised nearly 400,000 signatures, and they got organized in every single member state of the European Union. And that really sparked it. That's when I noticed, is writing for Basic Income News. That's when I really noticed an upturn in it. So I count this new wave of support for basic income as really having started around 2011, 2012, but it's grown every year. So a bunch of people are like, oh, basic income was nowhere until 2016 when it exploded. I'm like, well, no, actually it had been exploding for at least 4 years before that, maybe 5.
Yeah, it's amazing, like the progress and how quickly it's spreading. But now that, so we made all this progress, making a lot of progress, momentum, but now in the era of Trump, do you think, well, what do you think the strategy should be? Should it change it all? How would you alter it all to, to help introduce it to, half the country that's all very supportive of Trump? Although I guess it's the other half still may be need a little convincing if they're still, love the current welfare system, or just fighting to hold on to the current welfare system rather than trying something new.
Well, yeah. And holding on to the thing is, we've been trying to hold on to the current welfare system since Reagan. And actually long before that, the reason we have the current welfare system was some sort of a compromise. It was supposed to be a compromise with people that really didn't want to help the poor and people who did want to help the poor. So, okay, well, we'll only help the really deserving poor. We will judge them, and we will say, okay, if you can work, we'll make sure if you work, you have a job, we'll make sure you live decently. And if you can prove that you can't work, then we will support you with unemployment insurance or old age pensions or disability or whatever it is that you need. That was supposed to be the deal, was everybody had to work if they could, and then everyone would be supported, because supposedly that would give this great feeling of solidarity, and we would all feel we were in it together, and people would know that they'd earned everything that they got. But it was never fulfilled. We never eliminated poverty. We never made the benefits generous enough that they eliminated poverty either for people who worked full-time or for people who had a proven disability where they could not work, or for the or many of the unemployed. So, even though we never achieved it, then at least since Reagan in the United States and Thatcher in Britain and other politicians around the world, they've been slowly chipping away at that, making it less and less generous on every end. In the United States, there was a time when the most deserving people in the world were considered to be single mothers with children, because they couldn't work, they had no husband, they needed support. They had to stay home and take their kids because kids needed care. And then Reagan got this great idea of calling them bad, lazy people. Women who were raising children all day is supposed to be lazy. And so those benefits get cut. And then they don't adjust the minimum wage. So workers can work full time all year and still be very deep in poverty. They've cut everything. So this traditional welfare state has not paid off. Now, this gives us the opportunity to capture the left of the center in the United States and in other countries. We need to capture the imagination of the people on the center. Is that we got to stop. We got to stop trying to compromise with the Mike Pences and the Donald Trumps and the Paul Ryans of the world. It's that you're not going to find a certain number of conditions that's going to make them ever want to be generous to the poor. Their ideas, conditions, is just a reason to rule people out. and not help them. What we need to do is to capture the left and capture the idea that if you're really on the side of the poor, you're not going to be going around judging them. You're not going to be giving the message that we give to the poor. It's not one red cent to you until you do something for us. You get a job for us. See, we're so caught up in this belief that the prosperous have the right and the duty to tell the poor what to do, that we put most of us, the entire middle class, in the position where they have to do what the rich want them to do. Is that we, the middle class, we all have to go to people with more property than we do to get our jobs. And that puts us in a position where it's very hard for us to get ahead. And as the welfare state has been cut over the last 40 years, it hasn't benefited the middle class. It has made the middle class worse off because we haven't been able to get a raise.
Yeah. So yeah, it's true. A lot of progress still to be made just with the left. Now, how about the right? Now that you gave us that argument, what's your best argument for Donald Trump? You're talking to Donald Trump in the Oval Office. What are you telling him?
I'm telling him that I am out to defeat you. I will oppose you every step of the way. There's no convincing you. I'm going to use your disaster as a presidency to organize against you and to paint the harshness and cruelty of your everything for the rich man system that you're building into a corner and try to capture the center of this country with the imagination of what basic income can do, and hope that we can build a backlash against people like Trump, that his presidency will be such a disaster that people will want to make a strong move to the left afterwards. And we might get, and the Democratic Party has been moving to the center really ever since they had that big failure with McGovern back in 1972. Oh, we went too far left. We're afraid of that. They nominate somebody that's further and further to the center. And they did it again this year with Hillary Clinton, who couldn't capture anyone's imagination. Yeah. But we can find someone. But now that I think that they moved way to the center, and that didn't help even against the weakest candidate that the Republicans have ever put forward, and moving to the center did not help to defeat him, is that it's time to stop moving to the center. It's time to stop. It's time to start capturing people's imagination. And the left has a good chance to take over the Democratic Party and make the Democratic Party into more of a left-wing party. The Republicans, right-wing Republicans know how to do this. They could have ran as a third party, but instead they've been moving the Republican Party to the left. And people came close to that with Bernie Sanders this year, but he began to capture some people's imagination. And I think we've got a good chance of making further moves in that direction. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, but hold on, Carl. Hold on, Carl. Yeah. There are good arguments for conservative or like even a narcissistic capitalist like Trump, right? There are good arguments for basic income. You eliminate the bureaucratic welfare system. You eliminate government waste, and Trump. It's all about business, and in business, you give dividends to the owners. Mm-hmm. So if we're going to run America like a business, shouldn't everybody get a piece of the profits?
Actually, yes. I wrote a piece really just about on that idea that just came out in December, People's Endowment for the United States. There are arguments like that, and there are people to the right of center who support some form of basic income on that basis. And there is something in there. Is that when you realize that when we're trying to put all these harsh conditions on the poor because we think they're bad people and the only thing we need is them to work more, when actually work more is just living in poverty with the wages we have now. That we're actually, the harsh conditions we put on are really expensive. And there's a conservative argument for getting rid of those, all the conditional policies, and putting those towards just a more cost-effective policy to help the poor, which is basic income. That argument was much more popular in the 60s and 70s when we had an extensive welfare state. And there was a lot of savings there. But the Republicans decided with Reagan they had a better idea. Oh, well, rather than trying to replace the welfare state with something better, something that's more cost-effective, let's just chip it away bit by bit. And they were so popular chipping away, the Democrats chimed in. Some people think Bill Clinton was a progressive, but he ran on a platform of ending welfare as we know it. So enormous cuts to what single parents were getting, and then forced work requirements for people who already have a full-time job taking care of their kids. And then we get further cuts since then, and we can expect more under Trump. And the minimum wage is, I think, in real terms, adjusted for inflation, it's something like a third of what it was at its highest. I don't know the exact figure, but that means working people are getting a lot less. And so there's less in there for the conservative that wants to move towards a cost-effective policy. Right now, they're seeing in their sights, well, rather than moving towards a more cost-effective policy, we can just cut it. We can just cut it more.
Karl, it has been a pleasure talking with you. I really could talk for quite a while with you. But let me ask you to leave us with, why we should be positive about the future of this basic income movement, even with the Trump presidency, and then also remind everybody about that Basic Income Congress coming up later this year.
Okay. Well, there's one in New York. The North American Basic Income Guarantee Congress will take place in New York this June. It's not too late to put in a proposal if you want to present. Until June, it won't be too late to come up and attend. You can find out about it at USBIG.net is where USBIG.net. You can find out more about it. Then the BERN Congress, which you can find out about at basicincome.org, will take place in Lisbon this September. That will be the bigger international Congress, both worth seeing. And I think the other question was about what to do with Trump. I think Trump is poised to be a disaster. He got elected with fewer votes than his opponent, the most fewer votes of all the Electoral College reversals in history. This was the largest. He lost by something in the neighborhood of 3 million votes. He only got 48% of the votes, and he's unpopular. A lot of those people who voted for him didn't really like him. They were just Republicans, and they figured however bad he is, he must be better than the Democrat, which I don't know how anyone could think that, but they did. So, and he doesn't know a lot about governing. If you know your history, he could be to the Republican Party what Zachary Taylor was to the Whig Party. The Whig Party nominated a political outsider that didn't know much about politics, and he was a disaster, and it killed them in the next election. And the Whig Party never came back. Well, these days you can't kill a party, but you can kill them for an election or two. And there's a good chance that we're giving the Republicans enough rope to hang themselves. That's sadly, that's our best hope at this point. They've got complete control over all branches of government and most of the state houses, even though they're a minority government. And that's extremely dangerous to a minority government to have such extensive control. The idea of the Electoral College and the separation of powers was that you would get different parties in these, and you'd never get, it was supposed to empower the voices that are out of power because they'd be in power in one place or another. And we're getting the opposite, that the small voice is actually taking over the entire thing. And they're going to do what they want to do, and it's not going to work out very well. I think people are going to be pretty upset with it in 2 or 4 years, and we've got to take that opportunity to try to move this country in a more progressive direction and create a country that has no poverty for anyone.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I really hope the Democrats, step up to the...
Not even so much the Democrats, but I hope some people who are to the left of the Democratic Party now come in and take it over. The way people who are to the right of what the Republican Party was a few decades ago came and took that thing over.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, this was fun.
It was.
Thank you.
We should do it again sometime.
Yes, we should. Karl Widerquist, thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you at the Basic Income Congress this June, and maybe a live stream or two between there.
Great. See you then. Good night.
Yeah. Good night.